Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show, the Chris O Show, either on MuskokaUnlimited.com, on your TV Muskoka, on my Spotify channel. Hey, might be even on my YouTube channel. Who knows? I throw things everywhere. I just like to get our show out there and all our wonderful guests. Today, a very good friend of mine, known him for a very long time. I have a lot of respect for this gentleman, Mr. Matt Richter. He is the Green Party MPP, or not MPP, but the Provincial Green Party co-deputy leader for Ontario, right? I believe that's what it is, Matt.
Correct, Chris, and thanks for having me on your show. Really, I love following on the podcast, whether it be on Kojiko or any of the other social media feeds that you put it on. And yeah,
Awesome.
great to be here. Thanks.
So, Matt, recent news, like congratulations on being named the co-deputy leader for the Green Party Ontario. What does that mean to you that after all these years of working hard and getting the Green Party in Muskoka, their name out there, and all the good work you've been doing, what does it mean to be recognized by within your party?
First off, it's an absolute honor and a privilege to be appointed as the deputy leader alongside Ashlyn Clancy out of Kitchener Centre. We're both sharing the duties of deputy leader for the Ontario Green Party. It gives an opportunity to be a voice for a better way forward, and it really like I imagine in between elections when things go back to the side of where whoever the current MPP is, they are pushing a certain agenda forward for good or worse. I like to look at this as a position that I get to hold checks and balances on our current MPP and the the premier at the same time, and again just push forward a more sensible and logical agenda that can hopefully bring more prosperity, better healthcare outcomes, and hopefully better solutions for all the challenges that people continue to face.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know you'll do a good job at that. I know you've always done a good job to bring light to issues that are important. And I think that's why you have a lot of respect amongst other politicians from other parties. And that's one thing I've always heard about you, Matt, is like, hey, I love Matt. He's a great dude. I love working with Matt. There's never a bad word about you because you're willing to just share ideas and respect good ideas no matter where they come from. On that note, I know that we've talked about things and I've seen them and read about it. There's been a lot of really interesting policy brought up and policy ideas brought up by the Green Party. Can you talk about some of the ones you guys are working on right now that could benefit Canadians and Ontarians, I guess?
No, absolutely. Especially when it comes to our challenges that we face in healthcare, the housing crisis, and of course, needing real action towards dealing with climate pollution. But specifically, something I'm really proud of is our most recent push to continue finding better solutions for the lack of affordable housing and ensuring that people have a place that they can to live in and a place that they can call home. And currently, the Ontario Green Party has put forward a motion to table a private member's bill under Mike Schreiner,
Mhm.
and it's called the Legalize It. And Legalize It is a way of bringing forward one of the recommendations from the Ontario Housing Task Force, which was actually a task force group put out by the current PC government. And of all the different recommendations that this task force put out, we found that the current government was either ignoring the recommendations or just not acting on them. And some of the recommendations that we saw were very easy to put forward and have municipalities get behind were ones that just need more awareness. And one in particular that we're putting forward in this bill called Legalize It is the notion that fourplexes and four stories should be an as of right in municipalities and towns across Ontario, so that developers don't have to go through all the unnecessary costs and red tape of building what people need and what people want who are looking for housing that falls under the definition of a fourplex or four story.
Yeah.
The Legalize It has caught on fairly well. And not to say that it's illegal. Of course, it's not illegal to have
No.
fourplexes or four stories in Ontario, but it sure feels that way
Yeah.
when you listen to developers who just cannot cannot make ends meet, or they cannot see the financial benefit to attempting to build these when other options are available that they can profit from. So they
Yes.
just need they need the red tape out of the way, which is what this bill really pushes for.
Nice, nice. And you're right. And I think that that's kind of a huge thing. And I talk to a ton of builders too. And there's a lot of good-hearted builders who would happily build affordable units. Happily. But make, like you just said, make it easy for them. Make it easy for them to build
Yeah,
units where they can turn a bit of a profit, because let's face it, they're not in it for charity and they got to pay their bills too, right?
exactly.
That's how they make their living. But let them turn a profit while being able to make things affordable for others so we can solve this housing crisis. And I think that's great that you pick something, or Mike or the party, whatever you want to call it, pick something out that was already there and
Yes.
just said, let's bring it forward. Let's put it on.
Yeah,
Let's go.
exactly. And this was something that was put out by the Housing Task Force
Yeah.
group, but it's something, as you just pointed out, that developers are calling for,
Yeah.
people who are looking for affordable housing options are calling for. And as we've always said, like in the Ontario Green Party, we're just behind sensible and realistic policy. And if other parties want to use the ideas and get behind our ideas, great. And we'll get behind, really sensible policies from other parties too. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. And that's part of the problem with politics today. And well,
Yeah.
honestly speaking, ever since I got in to attempting to be our riding's MPP, it's still this political game and partisanship, whereas
Yes.
the sensible and the real solutions exist. They're right in front of us, and
No,
it's just about
exactly.
having the political will to get on with it. And something like this, again, it's not it's not some overarching unrealistic idea that we're proposing. That this is just something that would be a piece of the puzzle to help out.
Yeah.
And when we see in communities across Ontario, we see it happening here in Muskoka too, where people can buy a really typically say a small house, but on a large property.
Yes.
We see that it's possible to, and we see it happening where these homes are getting torn down and absolute mansions are being built on these properties. And that's totally legal.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were to take an existing house and renovate it or tear it down and build a fourplex, technically in many municipalities across Ontario, it's not that it's illegal, but the red tape to go through, it's just
Yes.
it's cost prohibitive. So
Yes.
we want to see things making sense for Ontarians, not where it's just making sense for the elite and the uber
No.
wealthy.
I know, and that makes the most sense too. Is like you said, you want it to make sense for everybody, and what you said makes the most sense. Like, yeah, you could easily just go build a huge, single family dwelling that could probably fit 5 families, and nobody says anything about it. There's less red tape. There's less of a delay to get things done. There's less fees. There's less admin costs. And I know because just I finished just or I think I'm finished. I'm just waiting for a little bit of paperwork to come through, severing a lot on my property. It took like 2 years. 2 years. And I'm trying to sell it to someone who will build either a family home or whatever, maybe a
Yes,
duplex or a triplex, like because
certainly.
it's zoned for that in the area,
Hmm.
and whatever, I don't care. But it's like now, I've gone through all this 2 years. Who knows how long a builder who buys the property will have to go through to get everything. Like, like make it easy.
Yes,
Make it easy for certain. If the project makes sense, if
yes,
if it's like fits in with everything, then why does it take so long for things to happen, right?
yeah.
And this is.
Exactly. And like your example is similar to many examples that were shared when we recently hosted a roundtable with elected officials from across Muskoka and
Yeah.
up into Almaguin. And we had various other stakeholders in development and housing advocates that shared very similar stories, but and then stories beyond that, just but again, that consistently revolved around sensible solutions that are out there that
Yeah.
people want to act on, but they just seem hung up on unfortunate old policy that's either
Yeah.
at the municipal level, but can be changed at the provincial level. It just again takes the provincial will
Yes.
the political will to change that up so that we can get on with building up our communities. And
Yeah.
that's a big piece of the equation, is building up our communities within the current town boundaries.
Yes.
And this is where the existing infrastructure is. It makes sense from a municipal budget because you're building on existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
You don't have those extra costs. And sometimes people up here as well are citing sprawl as being a really unfortunate event that's happening, that maybe years ago people thought of sprawl as only something that happened south of here towards Toronto. But I remember in the last election, that was a real cause of anxiety and frustration among
Mhm.
people in Huntsville, Bracebridge, and Gravenhurst, just seeing their town limits being extended and forests being decimated,
Yeah.
wetlands being decimated for new homes, new subdivisions, whereas we could be building up within town limits.
Yes.
And I have yet to meet anybody in our towns who thinks just continuously expanding the urban boundaries and decimating our forests for subdivisions that have homes starting at $1 million is a good idea.
Nobody thinks it's
I've yet to meet anybody.
nobody thinks that's a good idea. And I think that's the frustrating part. That's the
Hmm.
frustrating part, is you have there are good people out there wanting to do the good work to put in either rental units or homes that are affordable, while they get to turn a profit too, and do it within the boundaries and
Yes.
do it within walking distance of things for people and all that good stuff. But then it's like you get these, like you talked about, these huge projects that are not affordable housing.
Hmm.
They're very elitist projects, and they're not benefiting anybody really, and they're
Yeah.
tearing down beautiful areas for no reason.
Yeah, and I'm not against development, just like as you're saying too. And for
No.
people to choose to live in $1 million or multi-million-dollar home, that's fine. But
Yes. Yes.
the idea of sprawling to build and to make way for these big subdivisions,
Yes.
like in the last election, there was a subdivision that was sprawling on the very boundaries, like beyond where Gostick soccer field is
Yes.
and BML High
Yes.
School. There was a brand new subdivision being built there, that was starting at
Yeah.
$999,999, and we're like, why are we getting rid of the beautiful
Yeah.
forests and natural environment of our area to make way for homes that the typical person can't afford?
Exactly. And
It doesn't make sense.
that's where I think is the issue. It's not that
Mhm.
you're building homes.
Oh no.
And I have no problem with people making money and builders making money, but there needs to be some balance where, hey, you got to, there's we're hardworking people in these communities who can't afford a home right now, and they want one, and they work hard, and they work
Yes.
decent jobs, and they deserve to have their own home. If they're working hard, and you know they've got a full-time job and whatever, they should be able to afford their own home. And I
Hmm.
think that that's where a lot of us with common sense start to look and go, yeah, what you're doing doesn't make sense. We need to like rein some of that in and start making sense with what we're developing, right?
Yeah.
Because you know, anyways, we'll move on from development because
Yeah. No, no,
that's
fair
always
enough.
that's an always touchy issue. Before we go into any other topic, I just wanted to mention, and we talked about this before, and I've talked about this with a lot of people. Um, my dad included. I'm always like, I consider myself more a centrist. I mean, I've been a little more conservative, a little more liberal, depending on the topic and depending on the issue over my life. But I'm centrist in the sense that I I like good ideas from anywhere. If you have a
Yes.
good idea that benefits society, you have a good idea that helps me and my family eat, you have a good idea that takes care of our kids and our elderly, I'm going to listen to it. I don't care what party you're from. I don't care what part of the political spectrum you're from, whatever. If you have a good idea that benefits the majority of people around us, let's hear it, right? And that's why I consider myself a centrist. And one that I've always said is the Green Party tends to be that centrist party that already exists and sometimes gets overlooked. I hear centrists that I know talking like, we need a centrist party. I'm like, the Green Party is a centrist party. Don't like, everyone hears Green Party, all they think about is the legalized marijuana thing from back in the day. but that's not what the Green Party is. The Green Party's got tons of wonderful policy, good economic policies, some really good common sense ideas that anybody can use, and they're willing to work with anybody. And that's as centrist as you're going to get. Right? So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So when I say that, what do you think about that kind of thing about the Greens being kind of that centrist kind of view?
Yeah, no, and I'll always be proud of the Ontario Green Party for that very reason. And that's what keeps me excited about coming back from one election cycle to the next. And in this case, right now, being deputy leader. But coming up to the 2026 election in a couple of years, I am truly hoping to be nominated as a candidate again. And for the Ontario Green Party for Parry Sound Muskoka.
Yeah.
And a significant reason to that is exactly what you're sharing is the centrist view, but it's a centrist and a progressive forward view
Yeah.
that we always take best ideas and we put people ahead of party.
Yeah.
And that sounds cliche-ish, but it's part of our DNA. Like we
Yeah.
can't do anything else. And if it's fiscally responsible, if
Yeah.
it's environmentally sustainable and it shows social justice, most likely we're going to be for it
Yeah.
and we're going to keep pushing that way. Now, I would say a lot of other parties would say the same thing. But then it's one thing to say that, but then the other is to actually act upon that
Yes.
and how you push forward sensible ideas
Yeah.
and logical solutions. It's something that we're always really proud of. And I think whether it be in healthcare, whether it be the tackling climate crisis or whether it comes to the affordable housing crisis as well,
Yeah.
and solutions for small business, like whatever it is, it's it's about us promoting best practices,
Yeah.
evidence-based ideas, and then really going through for fact-based. And that's what we'll always keep pushing.
Nice.
Sometimes it may come across as boring, but boring can be good. Like
True.
I couldn't imagine promoting false promises or
Yeah.
sensational sound bites just for scoring a few political points.
Yeah.
I'm not signing up for that. And I've been in this for the long run, and I see that I think a lot of people, and I wouldn't say the majority yet, but we're getting there, where I think people in Parry Sound Muskoka respect having somebody who's into politics,
Yeah.
who's there more for promoting a better democracy and a more democratic approach to
Yes.
how we get things done rather than a political and a partisan approach.
No.
And
Exactly.
something that I think that fair and sensible way forward is what I'll always be proud of with the Ontario Green Party.
That's awesome. And yeah, and no, and I think that you're right. I think that there and I like how because you're just saying, yes, the Green Party, and there are people out there in politics right now who are representing a lot of different parties who feel the same way. They want to just work together. They're not bad people. They're there for the right reasons, like yourself.
Hmm.
But then we hear the media likes to the we'll say the traditional old school media, the legacy media likes to promote sound bites.
Yes. Yeah.
um and so sometimes we don't always get to even hear from any of our politicians because they're busy working. They're
Yeah.
it's only like a couple party leaders fighting each other over stuff that all we hear about. And for me it's not boring to hear good ideas and patience and lack
Yes.
of vitriol. Let's talk common sense, let's talk nice to each other, and let's get some stuff done is what we need to be wanting, what we need to be seeing.
Yes.
um, on that note, on a not so common sense issue, um, I know you've been at the forefront, trying to get some things done regarding the hospital situation that just popped up. What are some of the things you're seeing and hearing regarding what's going on with Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare and the two hospitals and the changes they were trying to implement?
Yeah. First off, I want to say I'm encouraged to hear that the board and the CEO of MAHC is taking everything back and taking consideration
Mhm.
as to the input from our communities to come back with something that might be more representative of what people were felt they were promised
Yeah.
from back in 2022. during the provincial election. And this is what I'm getting at, is when the provincial government promised two single site
Yeah.
acute care fully funded hospitals in Bracebridge and Huntsville.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody in our communities should ever feel like we're asking more than what we deserve.
Yeah.
This is something that was promised. And what I hear a lot is, this wondering, and here's a soundbite for you. But is it financial incompetence on behalf of the PC government, or is it intentional deception?
Yeah.
And whether it is financial incompetence, one could speculate,
Yeah.
or if they truly did deceive the public back in 2022 when they promised two fully funded hospitals. And I
Mhm.
use financial incompetence because this is where people are really struggling in our communities, is
Yes.
they heard that they were promised two hospitals. And I think everybody understood that building costs were going to go up,
Sure they did.
just like everywhere else.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so when the building costs were going up and MAHC recognized that building costs are going up, and in order to do what had been originally promised, was going to have a budget going higher,
Yes.
I was expecting, I think I think on behalf of the people of our area, I think we were all expecting a bit more communication from our provincial government why the budget wasn't perhaps even going up to
Yes.
accommodate for that. Because as MAHC said, and the board said, like they're 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 almost trapped with the budget they're presented.
Mm.
And since it happened, building costs had gone up.
Yes.
And then also, I really struggle with the fact that the first stage that MAHC had to have implemented in and have ready to go, to have signed off. Well, since 2019, since 2019, they had this first stage of ready to go, and
Yes.
it sat at the Ministry of Health until 2022. So 3 years went by
Yeah.
and nothing.
Yeah.
So you don't get much of an explanation on that end of things and how that held things back.
No, I
No,
know.
and nobody likes to dwell in the past. I get it,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we need to our elected officials need to be accountable as to why these things happened. And
Yes.
there isn't. It's crickets when it's pretty
Yeah.
silent when you get any
No,
when
I
you're
know.
looking for any solution there.
I know.
So what I'm hearing now, though, again, is something that we feel that we deserve
Yes.
and the people deserve. And I don't think anyone in any of our communities expected Bracebridge and Huntsville to have an exact, like, like an identical
Yeah.
carbon copy of each hospital. Obviously not.
No.
But something was missing in those discussions. I attended the Huntsville session.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I didn't get into the Bracebridge one, but I was talking to people outside. That one was very well attended.
Yes, I heard.
And at the same time, I have to give hats off to everybody part of the process,
Yeah.
from MHC to our healthcare workers to the people who were like the people of our community, who were all looking for solutions and answers to something that they felt was what had been promised.
Yeah.
The
Makes sense.
the people, I don't say this on a partisan or a political level, but
Yeah.
I will admit that I felt disappointed in the PC government
Mm.
with how they didn't step up and communicate where things were in the process, why they were happening the way they were,
Yeah.
and how it took and why it took all the 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 unfortunate anger building up to Bracebridge for
Yes.
the PC government to finally talk.
Yes.
Because after the other meetings, it was pretty quiet. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there wasn't any push to say, hey, let's make sure we can take this back and have further discussion.
No,
But
exactly.
it took until Bracebridge. Well, everybody already knew that there was controversy,
Yeah.
and I was looking for a bit more leadership from our local MPP and just from the PC government. in general to speak up and
Yeah.
share more during that time.
Yes.
So, you know, and I know it's a difficult position,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be in
No,
for elected
exactly.
officials, but still,
Exactly.
there's a time to step up and show leadership. You know, I felt it was a bit too late, and it allowed our communities. This should never be a divisive issue between our communities in Muskoka
No.
and Almaguin for that matter. And I think we need to look more to the government as to showing more leadership.
Yeah.
And personally, I've always said this. I've always fought for having two hospitals, one in Bracebridge, one in
Yeah.
Huntsville, and I'll always make the point that in our area, we've made our sacrifice when we lost the hospital in Berks Falls.
Yes.
MAHC used to be three hospitals,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't say people forget about that, but sometimes people new to the area may not be aware of that
Yeah.
fact. And you know, it's something that I share the passion of people in our area to make sure that we have what's needed to make sure that the best healthcare
Yeah.
outcomes are there for now, but especially moving forward.
No, I think that's a great point about we've made our sacrifice in terms of this region. I think that's a great point. And that's where we don't need to make any more. we, you know, and I think that that's part of why the whole two site um issue was so polarizing when we were discussing it before the plans came out, right? Where they were talking about, oh, a single site and this and that, and
Right.
everyone's like, whoa, wait a minute, how much more we got to give, right?
Yes.
How much more do we have to give? So why don't you go look at other places around the province if you want giving? Never mind the fact healthcare should just be better funded, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, full disclosure for those who don't know, my wife is in healthcare, so I know just how underfunded they are, and so there's a little selfishness there, but just facts. Um, so I'm glad you brought that up about we've been sacrificing and we've been trying to, do our best in terms of Muskoka Perry Sound as a whole. And so now it's time for them to step up and be like, okay, we're not taking any more from you.
Right.
Let's stick to what we agreed to and we'll make it work. Right.
Oh,
So
for sure. And I think it goes, it's an important stat that should go a bit further into the conversation as to the population base and having people, the general public and people who might be new to the area,
yeah,
or just people looking inside to our region
yeah,
and understanding the uniqueness of our area, that whatever our permanent resident base is,
yeah,
we fluctuate in such a unique way. I believe it was over 200,000 people is really what the MAHC catchment area services. And that,
100%. Yeah,
but now this is the interest, that stat has been around for about 8 to 10 years. I remember that stat going into the 2018 election.
yeah.
And
Oh, it's more
so
than that
so
now
it's
for
got to be
sure.
more than that
Yeah,
now, and I would really like to see some updated stats, especially with knowing that our population, just
yeah.
our permanent resident, like it's since COVID has increased,
Oh, definitely.
and this hospital
Boom.
is not going to be built for 8 to 10 years,
Yeah,
or the hospitals.
yeah.
I always somebody caught hospitals,
Yeah,
and so knowing that this is 8 to 10 years off,
yeah.
nobody has a crystal ball in
No,
terms of what our population is, but I will give a pretty 100% guarantee that it's going to be more than what it is today.
100%.
So, and that
100%.
includes season, like everything's just increasing. So
Exactly.
seasonal and permanent. So of course we want what's best going forward.
Exactly. On that note, we're out of time.
To be continued, Chris.
Dude, yeah, we'll definitely have another chat in the future. Um, Matt Richter, Perry Sound Muskoka Green Party, co-deputy leader of the provincial Green Party. Matt, and good friend to us, soccer coach, educator, all kinds of wonderful things you do for our community. So thank you, Matt. Thank you for coming and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Chris. It's always a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to connecting again.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And thank you everyone who was listening and or watching, wherever you're listening or watching. Don't forget to hit up MuskokaUnlimited.com and subscribe. And we're always looking for new sponsors. So you want to sponsor the podcast in your local business? Give me a shout. You know where to find me. Anyways, thanks everyone. Good night.